Welcome to eBritish IELTS. So today we are going to talk about how to use relevant examples to support your point of view in the writing task 2 of your writing module of the IELTS exam. Now remember, this video is specifically for the writing task 2 for both academic and general training papers, as the writing task 2 is common for both of them. So remember that we make use of examples only in the task 2 and not in the task 1. Why don't we use relevant examples to support our answers in the writing task 1 is because in the academic part of it, there is always a data interpretation question, and in the general training paper, there's always some sort of letter. So here, you do not have to make any kind of assumptions. You do not have to supply any kind of reasons as to why something is following a particular trend. You just have to stick to whatever information you're being provided in the given question, and you only have to mention those facts and figures. You do not have to give any points of view or opinions of your own. But in the writing task 2, you're always asked to either disagree or agree to a certain notion, to state advantages or disadvantages, or to mention causes and solutions to a certain problem. So obviously, giving examples is one of the best ways that you can use to boost your answers and make a great impression on the examiner. So now there are a lot of advantages of using relevant examples in your answers. Number one is that it helps you explain your point in a more detailed and structured way. The second, another very important advantage of this is that what happens sometimes is that you don't have a lot of relevant points of content while you start writing your essay. You have a certain word limit to cover, which is 250 words. So by writing examples, you can cover up those 250 words and you won't fall short of them. So that's why writing relevant examples is a great way of enhancing the overall impression of your writing task 2. Now, where do we use these relevant examples? You do not have to use examples in your introduction and conclusion, because introduction and conclusion, we only make a general statement about the topic and we do not write anything in detail. So always make use of examples in the body paragraphs of your answer. Body paragraph 1, 2 or 3, however many you are making. How many examples do you have to state? Ideally, the best number is from 1 to 2. 2 should be the maximum number of examples that you're giving in one body paragraph. If you exceed the number 2, then the whole flow of the write-up can be disrupted a bit. It won't make a lot of sense, and it also tends to be more repetitive. So maximum you can use 2 and minimum you can use 1. If you do not use examples at all in your writing task 2, that is something that is not recommended. Try to use at least one example so that you can make a better impression on the examiner. So now there are certain points that we follow. There is a set format that we follow for writing examples, which is define, explain, and example. First, in the body paragraph, you have to define the statement or define the notion that you're going to be talking about. Then the second step is that you're going to explain the definition or explain the statement that you've just made. And then you use a relevant example to further explain in detail whatever definition that you've made. So this is the format, the 3-step format that we follow for writing examples. Now remember, do not deviate from the topic while writing examples. A lot of time it happens that when a student starts writing the writing task 2, in the flow of writing, the student kind of goes away from the topic that has been asked. So defining something and then explaining that definition with a totally irrelevant example won't make much sense, and you will lose certain marks for that. So avoid deviating from the topic at all costs. Another point to remember here is that your examples do not always have to be real, but they have to be convincing enough. They have to be plausible. If you're not able to remember certain facts and figures, it's okay. You can invent them on your own. But just remember that the examiner shouldn't feel that it is completely fictitious. It shouldn't sound wrong. It should be convincing enough. Another point here is that using personal examples to support your answers is okay. It is fine. But just remember that you maintain the overall formal tone of the writing task too. whenever you talk about something very personal, something that you have come across personally in your life, you tend to write in a very casual or an informal way. So avoid doing that. Just maintain the formal tone of your write-up while using personal examples. You can always use certain quotes, facts and figures from newspaper reports, from researches, surveys, polls, magazines, etc. Whatever you can remember, they're completely acceptable and fine. Another point here to remember is that avoid using specific years and percentages, because obviously what happens is the examiner won't really have time or the resources to go back and check the relevancy of those facts and figures. So for example, if you're being asked about the importance of research in preventing illnesses, then you can quote a very generic example, like how in the US a huge amount of investment is being made into research so that certain illnesses can be prevented. Now, in this way, we're not really focusing on how much investment is being made. We're not really talking about how long has it been since the research has started. We're not talking about how much of the research has been accomplished. We're just talking about what is happening in the research and development sector in the USA. So this is something that you can do. Now, to come to certain key words and key phrases, how can you start writing these examples? So the number one is for instance, very simple, just 2 words. If you don't know anything, just write for instance and then state whatever example you want to make. The second is, if you are quoting something from a study, then you can write something like a study carried out by the development authorities or whatever. The third way is, there is evidence to suggest that. Now, evidence here means proof. Obviously, if you're stating an example to support your answer, it is going to be some sort of proof. So instead of proof, you can use a better word, that is evidence. Another way is, according to a recent survey. You can use this phrase when you are quoting something from a survey that was maybe conducted recently. If you want to quote something, mention something from a poll that you know, you can start by, a poll was conducted in which whatever finding was there of the poll. And then if you can't remember any of these, if you're not aware of any of these, then you can just make a very general statement, like to explain with the help of an example, and then you can continue by stating whatever example you want to give. So these are the points that you need to follow while stating relevant examples to support your answer. Just make sure that they are simple, concise, and this way you will be able to write very effective answers in your writing task too.